I had poured my heart and soul into making the company show some progress. But my CEO wife kicked me out of the executive team. Just to let her lover replace my position. The two of them openly professed their feelings in front of me. One was crying like a delicate flower, begging me to hand over my shares. The other, with deep affection, said, if I were her husband, I wouldn't let her be in such a difficult position. A husband shouldn't keep secret money, he said. But unexpectedly, I slammed the table and outright refused going on strike. This caused the company to fall into an unprecedented crisis. My wife cried and begged me to come back, begging me not to abandon her. I agreed right then and there. But the next second, I pulled out the divorce agreement from my underwear and slapped it on her face. I said, how could I abandon you? You still owe me what's mine. Chapter 1. The first day off from work, so satisfying. It wasn't until I turned 27 that I realized how wonderful it is to wake up naturally. I stretched lazily in bed, grabbed my phone to check the time. As soon as I unlocked it, a flood of calls and messages popped up. I casually answered one, and immediately the voice of the general manager came through, full of reproach. He scolded, George, why haven't you been coming to work? The proposal for the client is due tomorrow, and no one is handling it. We're all panicking. I turned over, adjusted my position, and responded slowly, Manager, we had the annual meeting a few days ago, and the boss personally gave me time off. I've already handed over all my work. You can just talk to Makoto about it. The general manager hesitated, stuttering. He hesitated, saying, Makoto, he's still in the adjustment phase. I scoffed. Then it looks like you'll need to help him more. All right, I'm hanging up now. Before the general manager could say anything more, I ended the call, tossed the phone aside, and pulled the covers over me. It was only 9 a.m. Plenty of time for another nap. As for how chaotic the company was, what did that have to do with me? I was just an ordinary employee the boss had given time off to. However, before I could even settle back in, there came a loud banging on the door. George, come out here. Hearing that voice, my sweet dream was ruined. I opened the door with irritation and asked, what's the matter? Willow stood in the doorway, hands on her hips, aggressively poking me in the chest. She complained. Seriously, it's just because you lost the promotion and year-end bonus. Do you have to make a scene like this? There's so much going on at the company. Can't you take care of your handover work and do something else? I lowered my head and scratched my ear, muttering softly to myself, I think I was just mentally assaulted. I need another nap to recharge. In a flash, I slammed the door shut and locked it. Willow was stunned by my reaction. Standing there in shock, she shouted from behind the door, George, if you keep this up, we'll just get a divorce. Chapter 2. I was speechless. Why does she always love to threaten me with this? I pinched the bridge of my nose, leaned against the door, and sneered, fine, let's get a divorce. We'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow. Whoever doesn't go is a son of a bitch. Willow's voice dropped in an instant. When the hard approach didn't work, she switched to the soft one. She pleaded, darling, I'm sorry. I was just too anxious earlier, but the company is really in chaos right now. Can you help me out? The new year is almost here, and we can go skiing together afterward. Okay, didn't you say you wanted to take me to experience something different? As she softened her tone and started to act cute, my thoughts began to drift. Willow, my boss and my wife, honestly, with my abilities, whether it's joining a Fortune 500 company or starting my own business, it would have been easy, but because Willow and I had been together since we were in school uniforms and walked down the aisle, I resolutely turned down a 7-figure salary and joined Willow's family business. They called it a family business, but it was really just a construction company that had been passed down from her grandfather's generation. By the time it got to Willow's, the company was already in trouble, having hired too many useless relatives who didn't know anything. It was my aggressive reforms and desperate efforts to secure investments that saved the company. Willow gave me 5% of the shares and kept me as the team leader for 5 years. Once the company was on track, I remained busy, while Willow, unable to bear the loneliness from my long hours at work, found herself a pretty boy, calling him a student in need of support. Just last week, she openly brought him into the company, making him the new team leader to replace me. The promise she made to Lou to have me as the deputy general manager was also forgotten. The most outrageous part, she was worried I'd have a confrontation with the guy at work, so she told me to take a break at home. That's why I decided to lie down and relax at home. But that pretty boy has no real skills, and sure enough, he caused a mess, which I had to clean up in the end. It's laughable. I do the work, and he gets the pay. How is it possible for him to land such a deal? I used to love Willow and willingly gave my all for her. Then I was reluctant to lose my shares, unwilling to let 5 years of hard work go to waste. Now, I don't want her anymore, and I don't want the company either. I'm curious to see if they can still keep things smooth without me. Chapter 3. In the end, I returned to the company, As soon as my left foot stepped through the door, several employees surrounded me. They spoke all at once. George, the client wants to discuss the proposal. We need to meet tomorrow to go over the details. George, the data for TNU's report is incorrect. They want it redone. George, the design draft needs to be revised again. I've sent the new requirements to your WeChat. George, the annual report is out. Do you want to take a look? I was speechless. I waved my hand and said, "Stop, stop, stop. Don't crowd around." I made a stop gesture, but the employees kept pushing forward, forcing me against the glass door. Helpless, I took a deep breath and shouted, "Can't you understand when I'm speaking nicely? Stop crowding." Normally at the company, I follow the principle that it's better to do a little more than a little less. I usually try to help with problems, but now these people were pushing their luck. I pointed at each of them and said, the meeting time for the proposal is already set. You can go without me. Verifying data is something anyone can do. If you can do it, then do it. If you can't, then get lost. Didn't you hear the handover instructions? You should be looking for Makoto, not me. Got it? The people I pointed at lowered their heads, speechless. After I finished speaking, a cup of water was handed to me from the side. I glanced over, and the person immediately avoided my gaze. He said, "George, I just came to deliver this form. If you scold them, you can't scold me." I chuckled and patted his shoulder, saying, "You're not bad. You've got potential." I put my arm around his shoulder and walked into the office. The other employees quickly stepped aside. After all, I had just been quite assertive, and no one wanted to get on my bad side, except for Makoto. I went straight to the office. As soon as I walked in, he had already brewed coffee and was waiting for me. He said, "George, you're here. You must be tired. Sit down and rest." I held up the plastic cup in my hand and said, "I'll just drink this. Don't stare at me, and don't rush to thank me. I've already made it clear to Willow, I'm just here to help supervise. I won't help with your tasks. We need to avoid any suspicion. You understand?" Chapter 4. After sitting down, I started playing games. An hour later, after playing Happy Match, Angry Birds, and some farming games, he couldn't take it anymore. He asked, "George, could you take a look at this proposal and see if it's feasible?" I took the tablet, skimmed through it briefly, and then flashed a brilliant smile. I said, "My review is garbage. If you scatter some rice on the keyboard, even a chicken could write better than you. A 500K budget for materials, and you quoted 200K. What's going on? Is the client your dad? Are you planning to pocket the remaining 300K yourself?" For the entire day, my sarcastic remarks echoed throughout the company. Eventually, Makoto broke down in tears, a man in his 20s, and a few harsh words made him feel so wrong that he turned and ran out. When he came back, he brought Willow with him. Willow, looking displeased, said, "George, I know you're unhappy with Makoto. He may be inexperienced since he just graduated, but isn't this exactly the time for you, as his senior, to help him out? This is one of the year-end projects for the company. Getting it done early is good for everyone. You're a shareholder too. If the proposal is delayed, you won't get your dividends either." I leaned back in my chair, playing on my phone, and gave them a reluctant glance. Makoto, taller than Willow, was now cowering behind her, peering at me with a challenging look. I impatiently asked, "So, what exactly do you want to say?" The moment of truth arrived, and Willow presented two options. She said, "Option 1, you help Makoto handle everything. If you're nice to him, he'll learn quickly. Option 2, you give up your shares. After that, we'll give you a fixed salary, and you won't have to worry about the company's profits or losses." I put my phone down, stood up, and applauded. I said, all right, Willow, you really have an imaginative mind. But Willow, have you forgotten why I took the shares in the first place? You said it symbolized that, in both business and love, we were one. What's going on now? Planning to team up with someone else? On the surface, you need me for the company, but deep down, you probably want me gone, don't you? Willow, you may not seem very smart, but your ideas are certainly quite naive. Chapter 5. As I hit the nail on the head, their expressions panicked. Willow furrowed her brows and then said, each word deliberate. "This is my company. I don't need you to tell me what to do." Makoto chimed in from the side, "Although you've made a lot of contributions, the highest position you've held is team leader. I thought by now, you'd have accepted reality. Now, Willow's cousin has his eyes on the company. To deal with him, Willow needs 20% of the shares. With that, she'll be the largest shareholder in the company. If I were Willow's husband, I'd just give her the shares directly, so she wouldn't have to worry." When Willow heard this, her eyes filled with tears, and she looked at Makoto with a grateful expression. She choked up, "Makoto, you really understand me." I was speechless. This was the typical simp talk, watching the two of them gaze at each other without a care in the world, their faces almost touching. I suddenly coughed loudly to make my presence known. I scoffed. Are you two not taking me seriously? Although I've known you've had someone else outside, I'm not naive enough to wear this green hat. Here's the deal. I'll sell my shares, but the marriage has to end. I'm done with this mess. I'm not getting involved anymore. A glint of excitement flashed in Makoto's eyes, and then he dragged Willow out. They whispered and schemed for a while. When they came back, Willow had a completely different attitude. She spoke softly. George, I know you're angry right now, and I won't hold what you just said against you. Please don't think we're targeting you. I'm really thinking about you. People need to look forward. Just take a rest today, and tomorrow, please report to the new department. I believe with your abilities, even if you start over, you'll quickly rise to the top. The corner of my mouth twitched. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Where did Willow learn these words? Did she forget that just a few days ago, her excuse for putting me on leave was that I wasn't capable enough? Not to mention, we've known each other for so many years, and now she's trying to guilt-trip me with this nonsense. I turned around and walked out. As I walked, I said without looking back, forget it. Look at the table. There's something good there. Chapter 6. It was a resignation letter and a divorce agreement. When I got home, I packed a few clothes and got ready to leave. Then, a call came in from the client. He asked, George, I heard you're resigning. Finally decided to leave that lousy company. How about you come work for me? I'll give you a manager position right away. I smirked and said, thank you for the offer, Mr. Chan, but I need to head home first. He responded, of course. It's been 5 years since you've been home, right? Don't hold a grudge against your parents. Even though your dad's too embarrassed to reach out to you, he's been asking people to look after you for all these years, which is why we've been doing business with the Liu family. I replied, right. Could you pass along a message to him? Tell him not to do me any favors because of Willow. We're done. After hanging up, I grabbed my suitcase and headed straight for the high-speed rail. Willow didn't even know that my family is actually quite well off, barely in the top 3 in the province. I had fallen for Willow at first sight, and pushed aside the marriage my family had arranged for me. My father was so furious he almost cut ties with me. I was stubborn, though. I actually moved out and lived a tough life for a few years. This time, when I returned home, I brought a lot of supplements for my parents. After apologizing and saying a lot of good things, their expressions softened. My mom patted my back and said, we know everything that's been going on. Just relax. The rest is up to your father. My dad, with a dissatisfied expression, said, how have you ended up like this? You've let them walk all over you. I shrugged and said, I'm not going to fight over something like that. My dad continued, since she's made her choice, she should face the consequences, good or bad. After reconciling, I packed my suitcase again and left. This time, I went north and hired a ski instructor. Willow had actually said one thing that was right. I had wanted to go skiing for a long time, but I could ski alone. By the time I had learned the ropes, it had been 2 months. When I opened my phone, which had been off for so long, I was bombarded with hundreds of messages. The most recent one was a voice message from Willow. She said, George, I know I was wrong. Can you come back so we can talk? Chapter 7. I quickly skimmed through Willow's messages. They started with some accusations, like, the company is at a crucial point. How can you just leave without a word? George, you've really changed. You're not even coming home anymore. If you have the guts, don't come back. Then came confusion, like, why are all the major clients asking for their orders to be cancelled? Did you say something behind my back? George, why do you have to make things so difficult? Finally, came the pleading, like, it's not what you think between Makoto and me. We've been together for 7 years. Why don't you trust me? I really can't live without you. George, I know I was wrong. Can you come back so we can talk? Willow probably didn't realize how easy it was to read her. She wore her emotions on her face. Everything she did or wanted to do was written all over her expression. My family started opposing me being with Willow because they investigated her background. The Liu family is huge, with 2 or 3 dozen people within 3 generations. With so many mouths to feed, and relying on a barely surviving company, Willow's childhood wasn't easy. She was the only daughter in her family, but she had many cousins who stubbornly believed the family inheritance should go to the males. Only her grandfathers prevented them from directly claiming shares, so they could only target her, trying to make her life miserable, hoping she'd just disappear. When I found out about her suffering, I was heartbroken and vowed to remove the obstacles in her way. Back then, when I reformed the company, I offended a lot of people, and ended up being disliked by both families. Yet Willow hid behind me, playing the role of a virtuous wife, pretending to be a docile little wife who listened to everything I said, always apologizing for me when I offended others, keeping herself spotless. I was blinded by what I thought was love, and it took me this long to see Willow for what she really was. But none of this matters anymore. It's time for me to reclaim my life. Chapter 8. I returned to my family's company. The first project I took over was a collaboration with Willow's company. I glanced at my dad. He was leisurely making tea and said, "Aren't you and her still not done with your business? I'm just giving you a chance here." That's true. Willow and I hadn't divorced yet. So, 3 months later, I was back. The company had changed a lot. More than half of the desks were empty. The front desk was manned by a new face who smiled and asked what I needed. I replied that I was here to talk about the collaboration with Willow, as we had an appointment for this time. Her smile faltered immediately. She said, "Boss Lou isn't in right now." I raised an eyebrow and asked, "Not in? I came all the way here to the company to find her, and now she's going to ghost me." The receptionist bowed and apologized. "I'm sorry, but I'm not sure. She left half an hour ago, and hasn't returned yet. Would you like to wait for her? I can get you a cup of coffee." Curious about what Willow was up to, I agreed. Soon, someone came over and said, "George, are you coming back to work here?" I looked up to see it was the same person who had given me water last time. "What was his name again?" He replied, "George, you can just call me David," I said. "Ah, David, I see a lot of desks are empty. You haven't left yet." David tugged at his desk tag and gave a wry smile. "Yeah, too many people have left. I'm just an intern, but somehow I ended up as the team leader." While Willow was still gone, I invited David to sit down. I asked, "What's been going on these past few months? How did things end up like this?" Seeing I was curious, David saw an opportunity to vent, and immediately began spilling his frustrations. Chapter 9. It turned out that after I left, Makoto's flaws were starting to show. The reason he could get close to Willow was because of his looks and his silver tongue, not his work ability. Within the first week, he had failed to secure 3 deals, including one with a long-term client. Though I knew that Mr. Chan had torn up the contract because of me, it didn't stop the gossip from spreading throughout the company. People never liked an outsider coming in. When I was around, they had it easy. Even if they messed something up, someone would clean it up for them. But when Makoto came in, they had to split his work, clean up his mess, and still didn't get any gratitude. Soon, the most capable people in the company, after receiving their year-end bonuses, decided to resign and leave. Willow had no choice but to hire new people to fill the gaps. However, hiring people was taken over by Makoto. He was afraid that new hires might surpass him, so he refused to hire anyone with a higher degree or better skills. In the end, they hired a bunch of sycophants who were completely useless. It wasn't a case of 3 cobblers can equal a zhuge liang. The new hires couldn't even handle the work that I did alone back then. With the company losing several big clients and making poor hires, its financial burden only increased. It was then that Willow remembered my value and wanted me to come back and clean up the mess. Unfortunately, she couldn't get in touch with me. Willow was displeased with Makoto's disruptions and had ignored him for several days. Later, I don't know what kind of sweet talk Makoto used on her, but not only did she forgive him, but they also publicly flaunted their relationship at the company. The remaining employees also flattered them, saying they were a perfect match. After making Willow happy, Makoto's behavior became even more outrageous. For example, whenever he didn't like someone, he would resort to underhanded tactics to frame them, then twist the story to Willow. She, being emotional, would blindly fire the employees. He thought that by doing so, he could prove his position in the Lu group. What he didn't realize was that the company had already lost quite a bit just dealing with the N+1 liabilities. Today, things went even further. Makoto fell down the stairs. Although it was just a few steps, he insisted on being hospitalized. Knowing there was a client meeting in the afternoon, Willow still went with him. I listened to all these gossiping details, and only when David was about to finish his shift did Willow finally return. Chapter 10. 3 months had passed, and Willow looked considerably more haggard, with fine lines appearing on her face. When she saw me, her eyes widened in surprise before she quickly walked over with a smile, saying, "George, you're finally back. I knew you couldn't let go of the company, couldn't let go of me." Before she could finish her sentence, I pushed her hand away, coldly replying, "Miss Lu, please respect yourself. I'm here for business." I waved the folder I was holding in front of her, sneering, "Miss Lu, you sure have a lot of authority. This is the first time I've seen someone let a client wait for 4 hours without a single apology." Willow swallowed hard, disbelief written across her face as she asked, "Are you with Penguin Tech? How is this possible? The company hasn't even approved your resignation." I closed my eyes, feeling helpless. "Stop making a scene. Don't forget, I've already submitted my resignation, handed over my work, and it's been 3 months since I last showed up. Let's just say, who says I can't work 2 jobs? And right now, it's not your place to question me with your company's attitude. I think we should cancel this collaboration." Willow finally realized that I was no longer the small employee she could easily manipulate. She quickly grabbed my arm, saying, "George, let's talk properly. Okay, there's a reason for this." Makoto fell down the stairs and almost broke his leg. I couldn't help but laugh. I asked, "Almost broke his leg? So, he didn't break it? Isn't Makoto in his 20s now? Don't tell me a man his age can't go to the hospital by himself. Or are you telling me that with such a big company, no one else went with him? Or is it that in your eyes, a few million in contracts are less important than Makoto himself?" Willow was speechless after my series of questions, unable to come up with a response. She could only mutter, "After all, he was injured in my company." I raised my hand to stop her from speaking further. I said, "I don't care about the love and hate between you two. I didn't sit here for 4 hours just to question you. We can continue discussing this collaboration, but you'll need to go with me and get the divorce done." Chapter 11. Because of my unyielding attitude, Willow reluctantly led me into her office and began discussing the design proposal. This was a big project for me, a design and renovation for a new branch of a company. If successful, Lou's company could earn at least $1 million. But as I listened to her stutter through the explanation, I could tell something was off. Resting my head on my hand, I said with a half smile, "Who made this proposal? Was it Makoto? Didn't you say he learns quickly? How is it that even the data is wrong now? Do you really need 2,000 tiles for an 800 square meter space? Should I find a primary school student to do the math? Makoto's 211 degree, did he buy that?" Willow fell silent, her face turning pale. I didn't have the patience to listen to her excuses any longer. I stood up and said, "In that case, there's no need for us to collaborate." She rushed over, grabbing my sleeve, forcing a bitter smile. She asked, "So, can we not get divorced?" Willow's thought process was something I couldn't quite figure out. I chuckled coldly. "Wasn't it you who said work and family should be kept separate? Why is it that now you can't make up your mind?" Yes, no one in the company knew that Willow and I were married, because she didn't want people to think we were a nepotistic couple. This would make dealing with troublesome relatives difficult. I hid our marriage certificate for 5 years. As the burden on me grew and our time together grew less, even though we still lived under the same roof every night, our feelings for each other slowly faded. We were more like roommates than a married couple. So when I found out about Willow's infidelity, I wasn't surprised at all. It was just a little frustrating when I sat down to write the divorce papers. Chapter 12. That day, David sent me a message. He said, "George, did you know that Willow is in the hospital?" I raised an eyebrow and asked what had happened. It turns out Willow's relatives had shown up. Originally, 70% of the company's shares were spread out, with each relative holding a small portion. Each of them had a say in the company's management. It was me, using the savings I had accumulated over the years, who provided Willow with the initial capital to buy back those shares, one by one. After the successful restructuring, for some reason, Willow ended up selling off a portion of her shares at a high price. But at the time, she didn't report many numbers to me, so I didn't pay much attention. However, she lied to me. With the money the company made in the past few years, even if we didn't live extravagantly, we could have lived comfortably and easily made it to our old age without worry. But Willow couldn't hold on to that money. Like someone head over heels in love, she spent it all on Makoto. She still wore outdated clothes, but bought Makoto luxury watches and sports cars. By the time I resigned, she was already living beyond her means. Her shares kept decreasing, and soon enough, she realized that she no longer held the majority stake. So, under Makoto's encouragement, she set her sights on the 5% I owned. No wonder she'd once told me she had 20%. At the time, I didn't think much of it, assuming Makoto made a mistake. It turns out he had been waiting for this moment all along. Now, the company had fallen into the hands of her cousin. This cousin, Kevin, was somewhat capable. He had his own entrepreneurial ventures and wasn't the lazy type. When Kevin announced that Willow was to be suspended, she couldn't handle it and fainted. The hospital diagnosed her with early-stage brain cancer. My feelings toward Willow were always complicated. I couldn't forgive her betrayal and backstabbing, but I had genuinely liked her once. In the end, I went to the hospital to see her. Chapter 13. When Willow saw me, she started crying. She grabbed my hand, choking on her sobs, and said, "I'm sorry, George. It's only today that I realize you were the only one who truly cared for me." I placed a bouquet of lilies on her bedside and raised an eyebrow. I asked, "Oh, what do you mean?" Through Willow's tearful recounting, I pieced together the full story. It turns out that as soon as Willow ran into trouble, Makoto was also kicked out. In the past few days, Willow had only seen Makoto once. He came to break up with her. He said he needed a rich woman who could let him live a comfortable life, but Willow was no longer able to provide that for him. Makoto really perfected the art of living off others, almost causing Willow to faint in anger. Willow yelled at him to return the money, but Makoto had prepared for this. As soon as he accepted those funds, he made sure there was evidence showing that Willow had willingly given him the money. Even if Willow tried to sue him, all she'd recover were small, insignificant amounts after a long and exhausting process. And now, with her terminal illness, she needed a large sum for medical bills. The only good thing Makoto did was pay a $5,000 deposit for Willow's treatment. After that, he disappeared completely. Willow's relatives had also come to see her a few times, and without exception, they all wanted her to give up her shares. Wiping away her tears, she said, "They don't care whether I live or die. All they want is to drain my last bit of value." After venting, she looked up at me, cautiously asking, "George, you won't abandon me, right?" I nodded. Before she could smile, I continued, "How could I abandon you? We still haven't divided up our assets. You still have 2 properties under your name, don't you? Let's figure out how to split them." Chapter 14. Willow shamelessly refused to agree and kicked me out. She said, "I won't divorce you. I know you're just upset. Don't worry. I'll wait for you to come back to me." Then she added, "You just want to abandon me. You used to say you were heartbroken for me and would take care of me for the rest of my life. We've been together for 7 years, and now that I have cancer, you still want a divorce. You're no different from those bastard relatives of mine." It's hard to believe that these 2 contradictory statements came out of Willow's mouth one after another. People outside overheard her words and looked at me with reproachful eyes. They whispered, "This guy looks decent, but who would have thought he'd do something like this? He's wasted that girl's 7 years. It's about time he paid her back." Willow didn't expect to receive such recognition and immediately became arrogant, saying, "Did you hear that? You're still my husband. You should take care of me." My expression turned cold. I smiled and said, "Willow, since you still remember we've been together for 7 years, you should know I'm not one to fall for moral blackmail. Fine, if you want to make a scene, if you want to drag this out, I'll play along. I'll pay for your medical bills, and when the time for separation comes, I'll file for divorce. Let's see who can outlast the other." With that, I turned and left, leaving Willow alone to silently cry. The next day, the internet was flooded with insults directed at me. It turns out someone had recorded our conversation from yesterday and edited it to make me look like the scumbag, creating a story around me. In no time, netizens were enraged, accusing me of being irresponsible, and because my face wasn't blurred, my name, address, and phone number were quickly uncovered. I received a barrage of cruel messages and phone calls, with words so offensive that they almost needed a censor. I glanced at my phone and turned it off. I couldn't help but laugh. I wasn't just using one phone, and I had several houses. Trying to crush me with online harassment was still too naive. Chapter 15. My mom called and asked, "What's going on with all that stuff online? Do you need me to help lower the heat?" I refused and said, "I actually hope those videos get even more attention. After all, the higher they raise you, the harder you'll fall." After hearing me out, my mom immediately poured some money into boosting the video's popularity. Then, right after someone threw paint on the front of my house, someone came to see me. It was Kevin. He brought a bottle of red wine as a gift. I asked, "Were those things online from you?" Kevin chuckled lightly and said, "Why would I do that? You've already left the company. There's no need for me to target you." I shook my head and said, "Not necessarily. Aren't you afraid I might reconcile with Willow?" Kevin looked at me, his gaze sharp. He said, "I know you're not the kind of person who cares about those opinions. You could easily resolve it, but with the evidence I have, it'll be much easier for you to get what you want." I leaned back, half of my body sinking into the recliner. I asked, "Then what is it that you want?" Kevin opened the bottle of wine and poured me a glass. He said, "I'd like to ask Mr. Wong for a favor. What I want isn't much, just something within your means." I took the glass of wine and said, "How strange. When did the Liu family produce someone this clever? I thought they only knew how to live off the old fortune." Actually, as soon as I heard his name, his profile had already been presented to me. Kevin was an illegitimate child. It wasn't until he made a name for himself that he was acknowledged by the family, and they hoped he would help support them in their old age. Kevin didn't have much affection for the Liu family. His mother had thought she had found true love, but after she got pregnant, she found out he was already married. After angrily breaking up, the fetus was already 4 months old, and if she had gone for an abortion, it could have endangered her life. Kevin's birth was never welcomed by anyone. He was a self-made man, step by step, all the way to where he was today. And his return to the Liu family was only to use the company as a stepping stone for his own goals. Chapter 16. After seeing Kevin's background, I couldn't help but reflect. In this world, there is no such thing as the worst situation, only worse ones. When I was in love with Willow, I would be heartbroken whenever she faced even the slightest injustice. Now that I no longer loved her, even if she had cancer, I felt no sympathy. The only concession I made was my final act of kindness. Kevin didn't take advantage of me. He simply bought the 5% share I owned at a fair price and expressed interest in future collaboration. Things quickly took a turn. When someone dug up that I was the only son of the G family, I issued a statement through the company's official Weibo account. I consolidated the evidence I had with Kevin and published the full video from the hospital, establishing that Willow had been cheating during our marriage. Netizens quickly began discussing. This woman is turning the tables. She was the one who cheated first, and now she's blaming the ex-husband for not taking care of her after her lover ran off. She's out of her mind. If I were in her place and was morally blackmailed, I'd snap and start hitting people. Apologies to George. Sorry, I wrongly blamed you earlier. Once the statement was released and the evidence posted, netizens began to turn on Willow. I heard that many people who had been used as pawns in the hospital went to confront her. Willow couldn't handle the shock and fainted. When she regained consciousness, the brain tumor had spread further. The doctor said that if she didn't have surgery soon, the tumor might press on her optic nerve and cause blindness. Her surgery was scheduled for the following week. She was frightened and reached out to me again. She said, "Just stay with me through the surgery, and afterward I'll agree to divorce you." I agreed. But before 2 days had passed, I made a trip to the police station. It wasn't for nothing. Willow had an accident. She had fallen down the stairs, hitting her head and leaving a large gash. There was no major issue, but when she woke up, she started shouting that someone was trying to kill her. The doctors couldn't convince her, so they checked the surveillance footage. It turned out that someone had indeed pushed her from behind. However, the person was wearing a mask and glasses, so their identity was unclear. After Willow reported it to the police, she claimed she knew the person and pointed the blame at me. Chapter 17. Well, it turns out, I did know the person. When I found out Willow was cheating, I had specifically followed her for a while. Her intimate moments with her lover were etched into my mind, impossible to forget. So, when I saw the figure in the surveillance footage, I immediately knew who it was. Yes, it was Makoto who had pushed Willow. After I gave my statement, the police immediately moved to arrest Makoto. Makoto, knowing he couldn't escape, admitted to the crime in hopes of getting a lighter sentence for cooperating. It turned out that Kevin had also made a deal with Willow regarding the shares, and Kevin's promise to her was to help her recover the money from Makoto and to interfere with his new relationship. Makoto had attached himself to a new rich woman, but she was also married, and her husband had a much shorter temper than mine. When the husband found out about Makoto, he had Makoto stripped and dragged through the streets while cursing him out. After that incident, Makoto's reputation was completely ruined. As if things couldn't get worse, Makoto was also sued by both Kevin and Willow. They accused him of embezzling company funds and demanded he pay back the money. Makoto, being a reckless person, didn't want to see anyone else doing better than him, so he targeted Willow. In the end, since Willow refused to settle, Makoto was sentenced to 6 years in prison, and his cars, houses, and other assets were auctioned off to cover the debts. Willow's surgery was a success. The doctor said that as long as she followed the treatment plan and had regular checkups, living for several more decades wouldn't be a problem. The day she was discharged from the hospital was the same day we went to register our divorce. Chapter 18. Walking out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Willow looked at me hesitantly and asked, "Will you get married again in the future?" I casually tucked the divorce certificate into my pocket and replied, "It's hard to say. If I find someone I'm interested in, I'll pursue it. If not, it's fine. After all, my money is enough to support me in my old age." Seeing my relaxed attitude, Willow's eyes reddened. She said, "You're always like this, as if nothing can affect you." Actually, at first, I didn't mean to cheat. I just wanted to get your attention, to see if you'd get jealous and angry over me. But gradually, I was put on a pedestal by Makoto. His mind and eyes were all on me, and that's what I wanted to feel from you. I glanced at her, speechless, and said, "It doesn't matter now. It's pointless to talk about these things at this point. Maybe I didn't do everything right, but at least I didn't betray you. Your remorse, your apologies, and your love can no longer stir anything in me, because, from today, we're strangers. Take care of yourself, Willow." I wouldn't tell her that I had also been confused at times, that I had cried in the dead of night, and that I had cursed the world for the cruel jokes it played on me. But people always move forward. What doesn't kill me only becomes the driving force for my future. So what if I lost love? There are still countless beautiful views waiting for me to see. Sarah Koo hasn't returned home for 3 days. She often forgets that she is married, that she is a married woman. When I brought the divorce papers to her, she was in the middle of a lively drinking game, exchanging toasts with someone else. Seeing me, she squinted her eyes and said, "Have a drink with these ladies, and I'll go home with you." My heart had already become numb from the pain, so I picked up a glass with a smile and walked over, happy to oblige. Chapter 1. In the most luxurious room on the top floor of the club, Sarah downed her drink in one gulp amid the cheers of the crowd. The young man in uniform blushed from the drink, his shy and inexperienced demeanor instantly amusing the high-status women present. I really like Boss Koo. She's so straightforward. Exactly. Those newcomers in the business world always act so pretentious, even when it comes to drinking. Hey, who's that standing at the door? Haven't seen him before. Is he new? Sarah had just pulled out a stack of cash and placed it in the young man's hand, who was overjoyed and eagerly squatted down to pour more wine. Sarah waved him off and followed everyone's gaze towards me, her eyes tinged red from the alcohol. She sank back into the chair and introduced me to the crowd. Ryan Wong, my husband. If any of you fancy him, feel free to have him join you for a drink. In the dimly lit room, several pairs of eyes examined me with a mix of curiosity and amusement. They were an investment team from the capital, Sarah's most important guests at the moment, and the way they looked at me was no different from how they looked at the waiter beside them. The woman seated in the center raised her glass, laughing incessantly. Oh, how could we? After all, he's Boss Koo's man. She must have been the guest of honor tonight. I smiled and sat down beside her, picked up a glass of champagne, and clinked glasses with her, happy to oblige. Sarah gave me a brief glance and said nothing, while the other women immediately surrounded me with their glasses. I lost count of how much I drank tonight, only remembering the overwhelming mix of perfume scents that made my head throb. However, since I arrived, Sarah hadn't taken another sip of her drink. She has a stomach condition, so it's good that she drank less. As the guests finally left, I pulled out the thin divorce agreement from my pocket and placed it in front of Sarah. Sign it. Let's part ways peacefully. Why don't you ask for a few million, Ryan? Is this all you're worth? Sarah sneered as she poured the remaining wine from her glass onto the agreement, instantly blurring everything. I forgot. With Sarah's temperament, how could she ever allow me to leave on my own terms? In 3 years of marriage, she never stopped trying to one-up her ex-fiancé, and the tools she used to do so were me and this marriage. Chapter 2. Sarah had a childhood sweetheart named Elias. When he was pursuing his graduate studies at Peking University, Elias and I shared the same mentor and dorm room. Unlike other wealthy heirs, he wasn't distant, and we quickly became close friends. Sarah liked Elias and kept a closer eye on him than anyone else. It was common knowledge at Peking University, because I was close to Elias. Sarah pestered me into adding her on WeChat so she could constantly get updates. At that time, Elias was always exasperated, saying Sarah was just overly dependent on him because she didn't have other playmates as a child. I could tell Elias didn't feel the same way about Sarah, but despite all her efforts, Sarah couldn't prevent Elias from meeting another girl while he was abroad for his doctorate. Sarah married me just before Elias returned home to get engaged. The wedding was grand and extravagant, stealing half of the guests from Elias's engagement party. I married Sarah not just because she paid off my father's medical bills and supported me through my doctorate, but also because she was the girl I secretly liked for 2 years. However, Sarah married me to make a statement to Elias. Marrying her ex-fiancé's good friend was the perfect way to show she had moved on. With her stubborn determination to win, she tied us to this marriage for 3 whole years. Sarah never changed. She would summon me at will, stay out all night as she pleased, and come and go as she wanted. It was me who became more greedy, not content with just the physical and superficial connection. But Sarah, she never had room for me in her heart. Even so, when I took out that divorce agreement, I never really thought Sarah would agree. She lit a cigarette and downed another drink, then reached out to me. What's this? Did you only bring one agreement? Ryan, you're not that determined to divorce me, are you? With Sarah's faint smile, I felt like a clown in a drama, playing the game of hard to get and failing miserably. Sarah came home with me after signing a big contract. She was in a great mood and clung to me until nearly dawn. I had a class in the morning, so I got up early. After giving her a light kiss on the forehead as she slept, I left the divorce agreement and a bank card on the bedside table. I was determined, but it was always hard to follow through when those bright, biting eyes of Sarah's were on me. After graduating with my doctorate, I stayed at Peking University as an associate professor. In my spare time, I earned some money from writing, and after my father passed away, I sold the family's farmland in the countryside. Only then did I barely manage to save up enough to repay Sarah. For a 10 a.m. class, I was already sitting in my office just after 8 when I received the dormitory approval notice. Right then, Professor Zhang from across the hall came over to gossip. Professor Wang, are you moving into the dorms? Did Boss Koo kick you out? We men must learn to bend when necessary. I didn't hear a word he said after that. After finishing my class, I got some food and saw Sarah downstairs at the dormitory. She was dressed in the new limited edition autumn collection, her tall figure and delicate makeup attracting attention. 2 students who had just finished playing basketball were blocking her way, asking for her WeChat. She looked slightly annoyed, but when she saw me, she ran over, causing the 2 students to cast envious glances my way. I pressed my lips together. Initially, I was determined to divorce Sarah, no matter what she came to the university to say. But she grabbed my sleeve, her voice urgent. Ryan, when are we going to the Civil Affairs Bureau? I heard Elias is having a divorce abroad. This time, I must seize the opportunity. Only when talking about Elias did Sarah's eyes shine brightly, full of the vitality she had back when we were students. It was only then that the bitterness of the strong Americano I had that morning began to hit me. Chapter 3. When Sarah and I got married, Elias didn't attend, and our bond as classmates and roommates gradually faded. Sarah heard about Elias's impending divorce from her parents. The wife he met while studying abroad wasn't from a family of equal status, although they spent most of their time overseas. It was said that she was often sidelined by her in-laws. Elias had his wedding registered abroad, and after the divorce, his wife planned to return to complete her unfinished studies. In the 3 years I've been married, my in-laws have treated me well, but in their hearts, the ideal son-in-law has always been Elias. During holidays, when our families would visit each other, I was the most insignificant presence. Back then, Elias's broken engagement and Sarah's sudden marriage to me seemed to cancel each other out, so the long-standing friendship between the Chen and Ku families remained intact. Whether at business banquets or family gatherings, Sarah could still exchange a few words with Elias. On the way to the Civil Affairs Bureau, I remained silent for a long time, the cold wind hitting my forehead, finally clearing away all illusions and misplaced emotions. Ryan, you know I've always liked Elias, right? When I responded, Sarah visibly relaxed and handed me 2 things. One was the bank card I had left on the bedside table that morning, and the other was a check, simple and blunt. I accepted them, thinking that if it could give her some peace of mind, so be it. In the second week after moving into the dormitory, I received an invitation to the Peking University alumni gathering. The news of my divorce from Sarah was spreading like wildfire within our circle, and no one expected me to show up at such a time. I was bored in the dormitory on a day off, so I decided to go. Did you hear right? Ryan really walked away with nothing. Do you know what kind of person Sarah is? Did you think she would truly love Ryan? It was just a game. There must have been a prenuptial agreement. Poor Ryan. Wait, Ryan. Haha. Long time no see. The atmosphere in the room froze for a moment until I casually pulled out a chair at the end of the table and joined in the conversation as if nothing had happened. Everyone present was a familiar face, mostly university classmates, some of whom were graduate students at the same time. The gossip about those who weren't present was lively and energetic. It wasn't surprising that Sarah didn't come. I could guess she was probably busy getting her hair done, maintaining herself to look as young as her rival. With Sarah's family background and appearance, she should have had no problem facing 10 men like Elias with full confidence. But, well, I didn't want to think about her anymore, as people were almost all there. The host was about to call the waiter to start serving the dishes. At that moment, the door to the room was pushed open, and a glamorous woman appeared, holding a man's arm as they made a grand entrance. It was Laura, my ex-girlfriend. Her gaze swept over everyone present before landing on me, her bright red lips parting as she let out a mocking laugh. Oh, isn't this Professor Wang? I heard you're getting a divorce. How many shares did Sarah give you? Should we start calling you President Wang? I understood then. Laura had come specifically to laugh at me. 3 years ago, she tried to get back together and wanted to start a cultural company with me, but I refused because of Sarah. The man Laura was holding must be her current boyfriend, one of the most prominent young entrepreneurs in the city over the past couple of years. Chapter 4. After graduating from university, I decided to pursue a master's degree, while Laura wanted to start her own business. We parted ways amicably. Contrary to the rumors, I didn't dump her after getting a secure future. During the 2 years I was in graduate school, Laura and I kept in occasional contact. She didn't date anyone else, and many of our old classmates said she was waiting for me, but I didn't take it seriously. The year my father fell ill, besides giving up my doctoral studies and marrying Sarah, Laura offered me a third option. At that time, she secured some investment and invited me to start a cultural and creative company together. The initial funding was sufficient, the position tempting, and she even offered to advance my salary to help me through the difficult times. Cultural and creative industries were booming, and Laura had accurately identified this opportunity for a class leap. I was grateful that she still thought of me, but when Sarah, with tears in her eyes, clutched my arm and said that Elias had betrayed her, I thought, to hell with opportunities. If I didn't marry Sarah, I would regret it for the rest of my life. 3 years later, I'm like a worn-out tire about to be discarded, while Laura's cultural products are selling like hotcakes, and she's on the verge of marrying the very investor who helped her. This was the first alumni gathering Laura attended in 3 years, and she was instantly surrounded by old classmates. They all marveled at Laura's keen insight, how she chose the right path for entrepreneurship and the right person to be with. And the one they tactfully didn't mention, the one without insight, was undoubtedly me. Why didn't Professor Wang marry into the Ku family back then? At least he would have gotten a sizable dowry. Laura's boyfriend suddenly spoke, making everyone's expressions turn awkward. He walked over to me as if he hadn't noticed, filling my glass with white liquor until it overflowed. Am I wrong? How much can you make as a professor? Isn't that right, Professor Wong? I thought of the check Sarah had handed me. Forget about one lifetime. Even in 2 lifetimes, it would be hard to earn that much, but I just let it expire, turning into a worthless piece of paper. Maybe when I'm old, I can take it out and brag to the ignorant youth about how much I sacrificed for love. The overflowing liquor dripped onto my pants, a mix of contempt and humiliation, but I had brought it upon myself. Forcing a smile, I reached for the glass, but before I could take it, a fragrance swept over me. A person's arm wrapped around my neck, and another hand took the glass first, spilling most of the liquor onto Laura's boyfriend. I'm the last one to arrive, so I'll punish myself with a drink first. Ryan and I will cover tonight's bill. I watched as Sarah downed half the glass, leaving Laura and her boyfriend with sour expressions. The other old classmates quickly caught on, praising Sarah's generosity while subtly isolating Laura and her boyfriend. Sarah, slightly tipsy, leaned against me, her pale face visibly flushed. Sorry, honey, I'm late. Chapter 5. Sarah was supposed to use the 1-month cooling-off period during our divorce to draw a clear line between us. Yet she still came to the alumni gathering, acting as close as ever, making the idea of divorce seem ridiculous. My Wong is an academic. He just loves teaching. He doesn't care about being the CEO of the main company. What can I do? If Laura always carried herself with a certain pretense, Sarah, when she wanted, could blend in with anyone. At that moment, she carried a jug and a cup, making her way around the table, becoming the life of the party. She turned the alumni gathering into a lively event, and I couldn't stop her without embarrassing her in front of our classmates. So I let her be. Everyone praised us for our deep affection, envying our marriage. Just as she approached Laura and her boyfriend, the jug ran out of wine. Sarah rubbed her head, pretending to be overwhelmed by the alcohol, and stumbled into my arms. The strained smiles on Laura and her boyfriend's faces instantly fell apart, ignoring her boyfriend's attempts to console her. Laura grabbed her bag and coat and left the gathering. I helped Sarah up, apologized to the others, paid the bill, and took her to the car. But Sarah clung to my shirt, refusing to let go, so I had no choice but to get into the car with her. Sir, Boss Koo came from an important business event. Should we head back? No wonder they sent a business car today, the driver asked me through the rearview mirror, but Sarah was already asleep on my lap. No matter how important the event was, she wasn't going back. I brushed aside the strands of hair tickling her forehead, my fingers catching a familiar scent of fruity shampoo, more intoxicating than the wine. Take us home. I could sense that Sarah was deliberately protecting me tonight and targeting Laura and her boyfriend. Sarah has always been a strong person. If the puppy she raised was barked at by another, she would be the first to bark back. Maybe Sarah just pitied me, a doctoral graduate and university professor, yet still a bookworm who couldn't talk back when mocked. My phone buzzed a few times. Not wanting to wake her, I reached to silence it but saw a message from the host. Boss Koo wasn't going to come, but when I mentioned Laura was making fun of you, she showed up in a flash. There's no such thing as a couple who doesn't fight. Go home and talk things through. Stop jumping to divorce every time. The white paper symbolizing love should have turned to ashes when Sarah handed me that check, but now, a faint ember flickered in my heart, showing signs of rekindling. It was as if I just needed to add a little fuel to start a wildfire. But just as I was about to gather the first twig, it began to rain. I carried Sarah out of the car, and up ahead, a man slightly tilted his umbrella, revealing a face half covered in stubble. No longer the dazzling figure he was in university. He looked more pathetic under the umbrella than if he were in the rain. Sarah woke up at that moment, wriggled out of my arms, and ran towards him. She didn't care about the wind or rain, only that her hands were quick enough to grasp that man. Elias had returned home after his divorce. Sarah was finally getting what she wanted. I should congratulate her, but I could only stand in the rain, letting my tears cool. Chapter 6. The only clarity Sarah had left in her drunken state was to recognize Elias. Now, she couldn't even find her own home. I took the umbrella from the driver and walked towards the house across the way. As I waited for the housekeeper to open the door, I moved the potted plants from the rain-drenched yard into the garage. This house was the one Sarah and I shared after our marriage, and all the potted plants in and around the yard were planted and nurtured by me over the past 3 years. Azaleas, jasmines, and begonias had all bloomed under my care, except for Sarah. She was like a misplanted stone, unable to blossom no matter how much care she received. Elias helped Sarah as they stumbled closer, his umbrella tilted, leaving half of his clothes drenched. Of course, childhood sweethearts who know each other well are bound to bring more comfort, and most importantly, Sarah genuinely liked him. Ryan, it's been a long time. It's so late. Where are you headed? It had indeed been a long time since I'd seen Elias. He didn't finish his doctorate before returning home to take over the family business. living half the time abroad with his wife. For the past 2 years, I've avoided being in the same place as him. Sarah had her own pride. During Elias's marriage, she never crossed any lines, but she stood at a distance, watching that loving couple with a look that evoked both pity and helplessness, like a child who couldn't get the candy they wanted. I was afraid that one day I wouldn't be able to resist punching Elias, demanding to know why he broke off the engagement, why he made Sarah suffer. But now, I had no grounds to say anything. Once the cooling-off period for the divorce ended, whether Sarah's world was sunny or stormy would have nothing to do with me. I have some matters to take care of at the university, and we're in the process of getting a divorce. Elias didn't say anything else. He continued to support Sarah as they walked towards the housekeeper. As I turned back towards the driver, I felt a tug on my shirt. Looking down, I saw that Sarah's hand had grabbed hold of my shirt again. As she murmured, "Don't go," repeatedly, I gently pulled my shirt free and got into the car. Sarah had just mistaken me for someone else. When she wakes up and sees Elias, she will surely be happy. After that day, I didn't see Sarah again. When the cooling-off period for the divorce ended, I sent her a message on WeChat, asking to meet at the Civil Affairs Bureau. I took a day off and waited from morning until the end of the workday, but Sarah never showed up. This was the marriage she was eager to end, no matter how important something else was. It should have taken a back seat. Feeling uneasy, I contacted her assistant, only to be told that Sarah had been hospitalized due to a stomach perforation caused by excessive drinking. The assistant also mentioned that Elias was planning to remarry and was preparing to leave his company behind to live abroad with his wife for an extended period. I went to the Chen family home, where the emotions I had suppressed for the past 3 years surged through my fists, over and over again, aimed at Elias. What on earth did he take Sarah for? Chapter 7. In terms of physique and strength, I'm no match for Elias, but when it comes to who's willing to go all out, he's no match for me. After the 2 Chen family drivers held me back, and the Chen elders surrounded the bruised and battered Elias, threatening to call the police and vowing to have me stripped of my title and job, I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth, glaring at Elias with a look that could peel the flesh from his bones. He knew everything, knew about Sarah's love and her waiting, yet he still gave her hope only to cruelly take it away. Elias dismissed the drivers and his parents, then sat down on the steps by the gate, patting the spot next to him. As I sat down, the spot where I'd just been kicked ached, and I couldn't help but turn my head, gritting my teeth in pain. "Ryan, I didn't realize you genuinely cared about Sarah. I guess I misunderstood these past few years." Yes, that's what everyone close to us thought. They believed I married Sarah only to take advantage of her vulnerability, that I had ulterior motives. Whether my feelings were sincere or not, everyone could question them, but Elias had no right. You just got divorced and came running back to Sarah, treating her like a backup plan, a band-aid for your wounds. Can you swear that you've always seen Sarah as nothing more than a sister, a friend? When Elias remained silent, a bitter expression forming at the corners of his eyes, I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. As a fellow man, who couldn't guess what was really going on in the depths of his heart. Just as I had avoided Elias these past 3 years, hadn't he been avoiding me as well? In the end, he just wanted Sarah to stay where she was, waiting for him to turn around. After I exposed Elias's hypocrisy, he took a moment to process it before slapping himself hard across the face. He said that this time, he didn't plan to return, that he was leaving the family and the company to his younger brother. Finally, he looked at me, hesitating as if he wanted to say something, waiting for his emotions to settle. "You and Sarah, take care of each other. What future is there for Sarah and me?" She hadn't even fully recovered before we completed the divorce formalities. I looked at the wide, straight road ahead, and when I turned back, I realized that Sarah's figure had already disappeared from the narrow bridge. She walked away so quickly, without fear or hesitation, without a trace of regret. After that, the days passed like sand through an hourglass. Before I knew it, most of the time had slipped away. I was in my dorm room, replying to emails when I received a call from my former mother-in-law. "Son-in-law Wang, please go check on Sarah. She's not listening to us." Chapter 8. I never expected that getting divorced would actually make my former mother-in-law acknowledge me. She told me that Sarah wasn't managing the company, nor was she staying home. Despite not having fully recovered, she was out drinking every day, turning from a distinguished businesswoman into a full-blown alcoholic. Tonight, Sarah and a few of her rich, spoiled friends were hosting a yacht party, and one of the heiresses from an entertainment company had brought along her newly signed boy band members to join them. When I boarded the yacht, I saw Sarah on the illuminated deck sofa, biting into an apple as she slowly leaned closer to one of the male artists. I walked over and draped my coat over her shoulders. It was the dead of winter, and yet she was out in the cold sea breeze, dressed so lightly and making a spectacle of herself. My interruption clearly killed the mood for everyone present. "Isn't that Ku's PhD husband? We said no bringing significant others to the party, didn't we?" Ku's breaking the rules. How should we punish her? Ku failed the last dare too. She definitely deserves a good punishment. At that moment, a woman handed me a glass of wine, and I noticed the table behind her. They had been playing a game of truth or dare. It seemed they didn't know that Sarah and I had divorced. I decided it was better not to make a scene, so I tried to pull Sarah away, but she yanked herself free with a hard shove. Ryan Wong, mind your own business. Hick. The smell of alcohol on her breath made me frown, so I bent down and hoisted Sarah over my shoulder. But as I turned to leave, a few women blocked my way. Don't be in such a hurry, Dr. Wong. We don't play on credit here. How about you take Ku's punishment for her? I didn't want to deal with this group, but then someone got into the cockpit and started driving the yacht further out to sea. Now I couldn't leave, so I had no choice but to put Sarah in a sheltered spot. All right, what's the game? 3 punishments, 3 dares. If I refused one, Sarah would have to drink 3 glasses of wine as a penalty. For the first 2, I awkwardly danced with the boy band members and loudly recited a love poem. But for the third, someone who was too drunk grabbed Sarah's bag and tossed it into the sea. Dr. Wong is so devoted to Ku. How about you dive in and fetch her bag? You're being too harsh. That bag has Ku's most treasured things in it. If you don't get it back, she'll kill you when she sobers up. Hee hee. Maybe Dr. Wong doesn't even know how to swim. Even though they kept calling me Dr. Wong, it was clear that it was just another form of contempt. The boy band members leaned against the railings with their drinks, smirking as if to say, what's the point of having a PhD? You still have to entertain the rich, just like us. I clenched my fists so tightly that my bones made a cracking sound. I wanted to end this farce right then and there, but the voice that came from the corner, colder than the winter sea breeze, made my heart sink. Sarah had woken up. She was smiling at me, but her eyes were as cold as the night sea. Ryan can swim really well. He even won awards at Peking University. Ryan, be a dear and fetch my bag for me. Okay. As I closed my eyes and dove into the sea, I told myself this would be the last time I'd do something foolish for Sarah. Chapter 9. In the dead of winter, the sea was freezing, and the night wind, carrying the laughter from the yacht, whipped past my ears. I spotted the bag bobbing on the waves in the distance, but no matter how hard I swam, I couldn't close the gap. I thought about these 3 years of marriage. I thought about Sarah. Sometimes she was so close that I could touch her cheek with a stretch of my hand, and other times she was so far that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't even grasp the hem of her dress. Most of the time, when I looked at the bright and radiant Sarah, I thought she was just a mirage. At the end of it all, shouldn't I at least try to hold on to something? The waves and the wind stood in my way, but I pushed through with my arms and body. When the cold water had nearly sapped all my strength and warmth, I finally grabbed the bag strap. It was soaked with seawater, and dragging it felt like hauling a boulder. Those women said the important thing was what was inside the bag, but when I opened it, all I found were some cosmetics and a wrinkled photo floating in the salty water. The moonlight was too dim tonight to make out the photo. It wasn't until the yacht's lights flickered again, illuminating the familiar figure leaning against the bow, clinking glasses with someone, that I could see the photo clearly under the fireworks lighting up the night sky. In that brief moment of brightness, I recognized the 2 people in the picture, Sarah and Elias. This most important thing had drained the last bit of strength from me. Like a dying fish, I was tossed by the waves, my eyes stinging from the salt water, and a sharp pain shot through the back of my head. Sarah didn't even glance in my direction. Even if I were to disappear into the sea, the only thing she might regret losing would be that crumpled photo. I thought of the nameless character in the novel I'd been writing, who died chasing a mirage. Now, he has a name. His name is Ryan. Ryan, Ryan, where are you? Ryan. Stop calling me Sarah. This time, I'm really tired. Whether it's lying under the scorching sun or sinking into the quicksand, the moment I closed my eyes, the mirage disappeared. Who are you? I shielded my eyes from the blinding light, the words tearing at my dry, cracked lips, causing a sharp pain. The woman by the bed, despite her haggard appearance, couldn't hide her beauty. Her eyes widened, brimming with unshed tears. Ryan, you don't remember me. Chapter 10. Since the divorce, Sarah has been tirelessly running around the hospital for me, and she's lost a lot of weight. The head nurse and doctors all say I'm lucky to have such a good wife, lamenting the fact that I've lost my memory of her. But the truth is, I just don't want to remember her. To be precise, I'm pretending. After the wave smashed the back of my head against the rocks, the resulting hemorrhage and brain injury made amnesia a plausible outcome. The head doctor reviewed all the test results and could only shake his head at Sarah. And then Sarah started to cry. The nurse told me that when I was pulled from the sea, I was still clutching a photo in my hand, which Sarah must have by now. So why is she crying? We're already divorced. Even if I were dead, she wouldn't be the one to mourn me. During my hospital stay, students came, colleagues visited, and even my former in-laws dropped by. The room quickly filled with gifts and flowers. Everyone tried to talk to me about Sarah, attempting to help me remember her. I got fed up and decided to discharge myself early. When I returned to the empty dorm, I immediately wondered which thief was so hungry as to steal from me. But then Professor Zhang came by and told me that Sarah had taken all my things. I didn't go back to our old home, and I didn't answer Sarah's calls. I spent an entire day lying on the hard dorm bed, and when I woke up, I found Sarah curled up like a kitten at the door. The dorm had heating, so she wasn't freezing, but her cheeks and nose were still red. Sarah's voice was raspy, with a touch of her usual spoiled tone that tugged at the heart. "Ryan, I regret it. Can you come home with me?" I wasn't sure what she was regretting, maybe making me jump into the sea, maybe the divorce, but what if I went back, and one day Sarah regretted it again? What would I do then? I sympathized with Sarah for being Elias's backup, but if I went back and became her backup, no one would sympathize with me. They'd just point fingers and call me shameless. I gently pushed Sarah away, locked the dorm door, and secured the latch. "This is staff housing. Outsiders are not allowed." "MS. Lou, can you check who she's a family member of? I've had things go missing in my dorm. We need to get the locks changed." MS. Lou didn't recognize Sarah and began questioning and registering her information. I hurried away, almost running out of her sight. I spent the day sitting idly in my office. When I returned to the dorm with a set of bedding delivered by a runner, I saw Sarah sitting on the bed. For a moment, I thought I was seeing a ghost. Chapter 11. To get into the dorm, Sarah had to prove she was a family member. With our marriage certificate taken by the Civil Affairs Bureau, she used our wedding photo instead. Now it was my turn to figure out how to prove we were divorced. Naturally, she hadn't left me the divorce certificate when she took everything from the dorm. I didn't go back home, and she didn't leave. For the first time, I understood what Elias meant when he described Sarah as being as clingy as a plaster. Just thinking about it made me feel miserable, like a squeeze of lemon juice directly onto my heart, sharp and painful. That night, I left the bedding with Sarah and spent the night squeezing in with Professor Zhang. Sarah really dug in her heels at the dorm. Without a housekeeper or a cook, she somehow managed to stick it out. During the day, she went to work. In the afternoon, she waited for me outside my office building. Within a week, the entire campus knew about it. The powerful female CEO, determined to win back her love. It was a cliché, but it caught everyone's attention. More and more people started showing up as self-appointed love guardians, pestering me. In their eyes, I was the villain for forgetting such a devoted woman. Not wanting to bother Professor Zhang any further, I rented a small one-bedroom apartment off campus, just enough space for myself. I hoped Sarah would quickly forget about me. I didn't need her guilt or self-reproach. After all, my supposed amnesia hadn't cost me any of my years of learning. I was just pretending to forget her, and it hadn't affected my life or work in any way. Sarah still showed up every day, sitting across from me at dinner, presenting the dishes she had learned to cook. Her fingers were covered in blisters from burns and cuts from the knife. In the past, she never even cooked herself. Even an apple had to be peeled and handed to her directly. Sarah wouldn't be able to keep this up. When she got tired of this game of chasing after her husband, she would leave on her own. Every grain of rice I swallowed felt like a stone, heavy in my stomach, making me seem cold and unyielding. After 3 days of heavy snowfall, the view outside the window was filled with all sorts of snowmen. Someone burst into my office, the snow on their shoulders and shoes melting into puddles on the floor. "Professor Wang, something terrible has happened. Your wife slipped on the snow and there's a lot of blood." Sarah had fallen just outside the crowded west gate. The spicy noodle soup she had bought was spilled all over the ground, long since cold. Just by looking at the packaging, I could tell it was from my favorite place during grad school. Back then, I used to take Elias there, and Sarah always tagged along. The snow was dotted with small spots of blood, and larger patches of it as well. I couldn't tell where Sarah was hurt. I knelt on the ground, at a loss, and could only shout helplessly at the students gathered around. "An ambulance! Someone call an ambulance, now!" At that moment, I felt a cool touch on my hand. I turned my head and met those familiar, mischievous eyes, still lively and capable of piercing right through me. Sarah smiled as she sat up, rubbing my face, which had frozen in fear. "I tricked you. I knew you were faking it." I shoved her away, slipping and sliding in the snow, fleeing as clumsily as I could. Chapter 12. If someone asked me if I still loved Sarah, the answer would be yes. The poison of love doesn't fade so easily. After trying for so long, I've only managed to scrape away a few pieces from my bones, just enough to get me onto a plane heading to North City. I completed my undergraduate, master's, and doctorate in Beijing. I got married here, and my father died here. I once thought I would never break free from the ties that bound me to this city, but now, at the age of 30, it feels like most of my life is already behind me. I sat in the airport terminal, clutching my boarding pass, watching the storm clouds gather outside through the large windows. The screens flashed with flight delays, adding to my unease. Sarah called. I had avoided her for so long, but since I was about to leave, I decided to pick up the phone this one last time. She didn't ask about my resignation, nor did she ask where I was going. Her voice was light, as if she was holding back a laugh. I looked around, half expecting her to jump out from some corner and startle me. Ryan, do you still love me? I don't love you anymore, and I'm too afraid to love you again. The words slipped out, a reflex from the countless times I had rehearsed them in my mind. Hearing Sarah laugh on the other end, my heart clenched, then slowly relaxed. But as she laughed, her voice became strained, as if she was crying or had been drinking. Ryan, I'm in so much pain. I'm bleeding a lot. Can you come see me? I had already fallen for her trick once. I wasn't going to be fooled again. Just then, the announcement came over the loudspeakers that my flight was boarding. No delays, no cancellations, and Sarah didn't show up at the airport to stop me. I'm sorry, Sarah. We both need to move on with our lives. I hung up the phone, and after a moment of thought, I took out the SIM card I had used for the past 10 years, snapped it in half, and threw it into the airport trash bin, saying goodbye to the past. North City isn't far from my hometown, and with my father buried here, it didn't feel lonely. Here, I was still Professor Wong to my colleagues and classmates, though no longer Associate Professor Wong. The senior staff at the university were kind and often tried to set me up with their relatives. Eventually, I jokingly told them I was divorced and had 2 sons, which put an end to it. The university provided housing for professors, and I adopted a cat. Looking back, it was probably foolish of me. The cat had no respect for its owner, always baring its claws and being difficult, but I liked it all the same. On sleepless nights, I'd grab it and hold it close. It was more effective than any sleep aid. Years passed like this, until one day, during an academic exchange abroad, I ran into Elias. He was there with his wife and children, and as soon as he saw me, his eyes turned red, and he grabbed me by the collar. Ryan, where have you been all these years? Do you know that Sarah is dead? Chapter 13. The rain that never fell when I left Beijing finally came down in torrents, accompanied by thunder and lightning. I resigned quietly back then, keeping it a secret from Sarah until I was already at the airport. Sarah had the car accident on her way to the airport. She was driving alone, speeding the entire way, and crashed into a large truck. No wonder I kept feeling like she would suddenly appear at the airport, blocking my path and shouting, "Ryan, you're not allowed to leave." How could it have been a car accident? It would have been better if it were just another one of Sarah's pranks. After all, she'd laughed at me so many times. One more wouldn't have made a difference. Elias told me that it was Sarah who convinced him to reconcile with his wife, and that it was because of those 3 years of our marriage that Sarah gradually let go of her obsession. But letting Elias go was like undergoing major surgery for Sarah. The pain was too intense when she was sober, so she turned to alcohol to numb herself afterward. The divorce wasn't because she was still angry with her younger self. Sarah was still lost, searching for a way to heal. It was my reckless leap into the sea that forced her to take drastic measures. Later, Sarah told Elias that she knew I was faking my amnesia. After all, how could someone who didn't remember anything keep a stern face around her all day? Sarah played along with me, trying to make me happy, but she never imagined that I was determined to leave. Elias waved to the little girl waiting in the distance, who called out to him as Daddy. His expression softened considerably. The first responders told Sarah's aunt and uncle that she wanted to keep it from you. But, Ryan, you should know that the person she loved when she died was you. I never imagined that one day I'd hear Elias say that Sarah loved me. After Elias left, I drank a whole bottle of water, but it couldn't wash away the bitterness in my heart. It was like a lemon seed had fallen onto my heart and been buried deep, wrapped in flesh and blood. I didn't know what to do with the bitterness. The connecting flight back to North City had a layover in Beijing, giving me half a day there. I asked the senior colleague leading the team for permission to go into the city. Go ahead. Go ahead. I remember Professor Wong spent quite some time in Beijing. You must have a lot of friends here. No, I'm going to see my love. I stepped out into the drizzle, and in a daze, I thought I saw a delicate girl leaping into a puddle in front of me. She smiled, her eyes bright and captivating. Ryan, I fooled you again.